Okay, this video I've titled The Last Generation, and that's really what the primary focus on this is. I have a chart that I have made up here, as you can see. I'll be going over that chart. First, I want to recap on getting up to it, because you have, after 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off. That means that Jesus started teaching at the end of the 69 weeks. He taught for 3.5 years. That brings us up to 70.5 years and was cut off. That stopped the clock on the 70th week. Daniel goes on to tell us that at the end of the war, desolations are determined. It's basically a war between Satan and God, good and evil. And on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate, which is Satan, even until the consummation, which is the return of Jesus, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. Now, Daniel couldn't tell us when this was going to end because he didn't know. Jesus was here. He didn't know when the end was going to be. He only knew the abomination of desolation was going to be the last sign. And that's what he gave us. When you see it, know that it's near. And the consummation is, then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with his breath and destroy with the brightness of his coming. Meaning that all the myths, the legends, and all the false teachings are going to be destroyed, because the real Jesus will be here. No more lies, no more deception. And of course, that's what it means. Now, this doesn't take place in an instant. It takes place over a small time period, and I will get into that as well. All of this false teaching is the coming of the lawless one according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and all unrighteous deception among those who perish. Unrighteous deception among those who perish. So you have the blind leading the blind out there, teaching the blind, and they're all going to perish because of all their false teachings. And so you have all this unrighteous deception that's being taught among those who perish. They're just teaching each other that. The people who, like myself, who don't buy into this 7-year tribulation period, we don't buy into this pre-tribulation rapture stuff. We don't buy into this, well, Jesus is God Almighty. We don't buy into that. We don't buy into the Jesus was an angel and all this. We don't buy into that because it's not true. And the Spirit of God is what reveals all these things to us, that tells us these things are false. All that said, that's what that is this goes on until this desolations are determined. So now we'll go back here and look at this chart, and I'll start on this chart explaining this, because this is the last generation. And I want to show something here on this last generation that Jesus said all of this will take place in a generation. He said, this generation will see all these things take place. They will see the end of the tribulation. They will see the rapture. They will see the wrath periods, the return, and they will mark the beast and all this. But that doesn't mean that believers are going to be here during this last generation, okay? We're going to be here at the beginning of it, and that's where I'm going to start now. So what we have is a great tribulation era started back when Jesus left. That's why I've said this for years. Tribulation started when Jesus left. It will end when he comes back. It's that simple. So what we have, the desolations are determined. Jesus said he walked into one place off the top of my head, I don't recall. He comes back and he says he couldn't perform any miracles because there was no faith. Well, that's desolation. Satan had already had the people convinced that he was not worth, listening to. Don't listen to him. And so he couldn't perform, and that's what desolation is. It's the lack of God's Spirit being able in that area. So what we have here is this 42-month period in Revelation 13:5, and it is not associated with any other time period given in Revelation. And it's the only one that says shall continue for 42 months. The time periods in chapter 12 are not coming in the future. Those are past events, so they have not going to be tied to this. But what we have then is an overlap of the end of the tribulation and the beginning of the last generation. This is an overlap period of at least 42 months. Okay, so here's where we come into this right here is the rapture. Harpazo, but here's how that works. The graves will open up first. That means that the actual place where they're buried are going to open up, and the dead will rise first. And there will be other graves left there that are unopened, and they weren't chosen. So you have graves will open up first, and then comes the rapture. Everybody's calling this whole event as a rapture. It's really not. You have a resurrection here, and then you have the harpazo, or the rapture, the gathering up. Takes place in the twinkling of an eye. The graves opening up, we don't know if that's going to be a twinkling of an eye or if that's going to be something that takes place over a 24-hour period, perhaps, maybe, as the graves open up around the world where people can see them and people may stare at them for a little bit, because it goes, and then those who are left alive and remain. And so that's when this takes place, and it takes place before the first wrath period. Therefore, it is not a pre-tribulation rapture. It is pre-wrath. It is post-tribulation. And it happens in this last generation that is here. How long that time period is we don't know. We don't know because we know that the generation is 40 years. That's typical of a generation in the OT. So we have a 40-year time span where this takes place. This first wrath period is the locust and 1/3 of the dead being killed, and the earth being moved off its axis. The heavens and earth will be shaken. Powers of heaven will be shaken. That's what takes place during this first period of wrath. But things have to calm down in order for a government to form, a new world government that will form at that time. And that's the one with two horns. And that what starts out leading up to the mark of the beast. So what you have is a time period of the dead, but again, this generation continues. But here's something about the mark of the beast that, again, it's a deception being taught. Remember when COVID hit, and it's like, I don't care. Every time you turn around and look, preachers were hollering that was the mark of the beast. That was the mark of the beast. I remember people getting Social Security checks back in the old days, and something don't cash without the mark. Oh my! All of a sudden, that was the mark of the beast. What they were talking about was a watermark. The watermark wasn't present. So there's all this fake about the mark of the beast. Revelation chapter 14 specifically points out in 14:9, 14:13 that the mark of the beast takes place after Jesus returns in 14:1. That's a no-brainer. Anybody can read that. 13:11, chapter 13:11 through the end at 18 is telling you how it's going to set up and take place, not when. So 13:11 through the end of chapter 14 is really one event. Needless to say, Jesus returns, and when the people who were not gathered up here are seeing Jesus, they will say, wow, I'm not taking the mark. And so they will, the Bible says, they're beheaded for it. And there's plenty of guillotines around the world if you do some check onto it. It says they will be beheaded. And but what happens to these people is at the end of chapter 14, it talks about thrust in your sickle, for the earth is ripe and the harvest time is now. So these people were not in this generation here. Why is that? Because these are called the dead. Blessed are the dead, and who reject the mark of the beast. The best are the dead who die in Christ from this point on. because they will reject the mark. They were dead, so they were not faithful people. But this time span here has went on, and these people may be getting second thoughts. And then Jesus pops up right in here, and next thing you know, they're like, okay, wow, he consumed all of these things I believed with him showing up. He's the real deal. They reject the mark of the beast, and then you have another resurrection stage, okay? And that takes place because they will live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, just as foretold in Revelation, I think it's verse 2. So what you have then is this consummation period here takes place, is still going on. In the second wrath period, you have Battle of Armageddon. And something else I want to point out here is this time period of Jesus on this mark of the beast. It's not given to us how long that's going to take place. Jesus is going to be here on earth, but this could be a year or 2 years, or who knows how long this time frame will take place. So the mark, implementing the mark of the beast, Satan is just going to be filled with rage. And hey, by that time he's going to say, hey, if they're not going to believe, fall after me, kill them. I don't want them. And so we don't know this time frame right here. We don't know how long this is going to be. Yeah. Anyway, it's not given to us. This could be a year, could be a few months, and then we have the second period. This here right here is the resurrection of those people. So there again, you have right there. How many resurrections did I just show you? How many did I just show you? You have 3 resurrections right there. You have the graves that open up first. You have those who are that says nest. I should say next. You have those. Let me change that. Wow, you see how easy that was? The harpazo happens next. So the graves open up. There's 1 resurrection. There's 2 resurrections right there. There's 3 resurrections right there. How many have I said there are in the Bible? There are 7 resurrections in the Bible. And you have during this here period here, you have the 2 witnesses who will be put to death, and they will be resurrected. So that during this time frame right here, you have 4 resurrections. You have the 1, the 2, the 3, the 2 witnesses, the 4, and Jesus, and 144,000, 5 and 6. And then you have the one after millennium's number 7. But I often count this as one stage right here because it's sort of a one event that's going to take place. So this time period, we don't know how long it'll be, but we do know that there will be another resurrection after that, so they can live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. This second wrath is the Battle of Armageddon. That is not Ezekiel chapter 38. Ezekiel 38 says it happens in the latter days. The latter days are after the millennium, not before it. So this stuff here is not it's not Ezekiel 38. And the beast here takes place 14:9, 14:13. The millennium begins, and I've got it posted around 2070 AD is when it will begin. And it goes on for 1,000 years. And so what we have here is Jesus says, when you see these things start to take place, know that summer is near. And so summer is the beginning of the millennium, which has fall in it as well. And the reason so is because winter comes after the millennium. And so the believers are the ones here in the millennium. The chosen ones are here in the millennium. But then you have this resurrection that takes place, 25, Revelation 25. The rest of the dead, which is all of the ones who didn't make it up to after the millennium, or up till the millennium, when the millennium started. They weren't the chosen. So the rest of the dead are resurrected at this time frame right in here, which is winter, and that's what Jesus meant when he said in Matthew 24:20, pray that your flight be not in winter or on the Sabbath. The Sabbath day is the day of judgment, and winter is the time after the millennium. It is this time we will have the battle of Gog and Magog take place. Now, this is a long time, and these people here will be offered salvation again. Jesus was tempted 3 times. So was Peter. And it says in there, likewise, the apostles were all tempted at the same. So they're all tempted. Were tempted 3 times. Jesus, 3 times. I kind of look at it once for each time salvation will be offered. 3 times. You have now, it's offered by grace and everything. It'll be again offered in the winter, and it'll be offered again on this day, on the Sabbath day. And so that's why this right here, I have another resurrection, because after this battle of Gog and Magog, in Revelation 20:12 and 13, let's see if I can pull that up here. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the sea gave up the dead. To stand before God, you have to be resurrected. It's just that simple. But when it says the sea gave up the dead who were in it, understand this is on the day of judgment. And giving up the dead isn't giving them up to a resurrection. It's giving them up to salvation. And so they no longer are worldly people. They're like, okay, I've been wronged. And some of it's going to take these 3 times to get them to see the light. And so that's what that's all about. And that is the last resurrection stage that takes place, where every knee will bow and every knee will confess. And of course, when you confess, that means your salvation is there, because Jesus will confess you to God, to his Father in heaven. And so that's what it means. And so by the end of the day of judgment, every person should be saved. That's typically what it means. So what we're back here now is we have, that's why I've got the red going in here a little bit, and I didn't mean it's like all at once would take place. But they have to be resurrected in order to go through judgment. And then salvation will come along, and then by the end of the day of judgment, every person should be saved. I want to say will be saved. That's just the way it is. If every knee bows, every person's saved. Bottom line, nothing more to it than that. And of course, after that, then we're off to a new heaven and new earth. So that's pretty much it. And like I said, the primary of this is to go over this last generation here, where there's a great amount of confusion here on this, because the tribulation ends and the last generation begins. It begins before the tribulation ends. The tribulation being the time of the desolations brought out by Satan and his Antichrist, his lawless one. I look at the lawless one and the Antichrist as being the same, because John talked about, he called it Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist. And Paul talks about it as a lawless one, and it's the working of Satan. I look at them both as being one and the same, but there are many, many spirits out there, demons and fallen angels that that are on the side of Satan, and they do his bidding for him. But anyway, this last generation, this 40-year time span, again, another reason there's no 7-year tribulation period. So I hope this helps. Don't know what else I can add to it right now. I'm sure I'll find something later on that I should have thrown in there. But thanks for watching, and hope you learned something from this. You can stop, rewind, play, all that stuff. Go back and learn. Read scripture. That's where you'll get your truth from. Thank you for watching.